We open on a Tuesday morning in November 1903. The place is Constantinople. A German engineer stands on a platform watching laborers hammer iron spikes into wooden ties. The rails stretch east toward the mountains and the desert beyond. The British ambassador watches from a distance. His face is pale. He sends a telegram to London that night. It reads, "The railway must be stopped." We are taught that wars begin with bullets or speeches. We are told that empires fall because of bad generals or weak kings. But that is a lie told to children. The real story is always the same. Empires collapse when the money runs out. This is not a story about a train. It is a story about a ledger, and the ledger always wins. Let us go back to the year 1900. The British Empire is the largest political structure in human history. It controls 1/4 of the Earth's land surface. It rules over 400 million people. The Royal Navy has more ships than the next 3 navies combined. London is the financial capital of the world. Every major trade route passes through a British choke point: Suez, Gibraltar, Singapore, the Cape. If you wanted to move goods from Europe to Asia, you paid Britain. If you wanted credit to build a factory, you borrowed from a British bank. The whole system rested on one principle: control the sea, and you control the world. The British had turned geography into a monopoly, and monopolies make infinite money, until someone builds a road around them. The Ottoman Empire is dying. Everyone knows it. The empire has lost Greece. It has lost Egypt. It has lost control of its own finances. In 1875, the Ottoman government declared bankruptcy. They could not pay the interest on their loans. So the European creditors did what creditors always do. They took control. In 1881, they created the Ottoman Public Debt Administration. This was not a government agency. It was a collection company. It was staffed by British and French bankers. They collected the empire's taxes directly. If a merchant in Damascus sold tobacco, the money went to a vault in Paris. If a farmer in Anatolia sold wheat, the profit went to London. The Sultan still sat on his throne, but the throne was hollow. The empire had become a company, and the shareholders were foreigners. Sultan Abdul Hamid II understood what was happening. He was not a fool. He knew that his empire was being bled dry. Every year the debt grew larger. Every year the creditors demanded more control. He needed a way out. He needed infrastructure that could move troops and goods across his vast territory. He needed a railway that could connect Constantinople to the Persian Gulf, a railway that could bypass the British Navy and the Suez Canal. But he could not ask the British or the French to build it. They were the ones strangling him. So he turned to Germany. Germany is the new power in Europe. It unified in 1871 under Bismarck. Its factories are the most advanced in the world. Its chemists and engineers are producing steel and dyes and machines faster than anyone else. But Germany has a problem. It has no empire. Britain controls the seas. France controls North Africa. Even tiny Belgium has the Congo. Germany is landlocked by politics. It has coal and iron, but no rubber, no oil, no cotton. It must import everything. And to import, it must use British shipping lanes. Kaiser Wilhelm II looks at the map and sees a cage. He needs a way to break out. He needs access to resources that do not require passing through a British port. The Ottoman Empire offers him that path. In 1899, a German company called the Anatolian Railway Company wins the contract. The plan is simple. Build a railway from Constantinople through Anatolia, across Syria, and down into Mesopotamia. The final destination is Baghdad. From Baghdad, the line will extend to Basra, on the Persian Gulf. The whole route will be nearly 2,000 kilometers. It will be financed by Deutsche Bank. It will be built by German engineers. And it will be protected by Ottoman soldiers. For Germany, this railway is everything. It will allow German goods to reach the Indian Ocean without ever seeing a British warship. It will give Germany access to the grain of Anatolia and the oil of Mesopotamia. It will turn Germany into a continental power. For Britain, it is a dagger aimed at the heart of the empire. The British establishment panics. They do not panic publicly. They panic in private meetings in the Foreign Office and in letters marked confidential. They look at the map and see the future. If the railway is finished, Germany will have a land bridge to the east. German merchants will flood the markets of Persia and India. German military advisors will train Ottoman armies. And worst of all, Germany will control the oil. In 1900, oil is still a novelty. By 1910, it is the future. The British Navy is converting from coal to oil. Oil burns hotter. It allows ships to travel faster and farther. Admiral John Fisher, the first Sea Lord, declares that oil is the lifeblood of naval power. But Britain has no oil. The island has coal, but not a single barrel of crude. Britain must import oil from Persia and the United States. And geologists are beginning to whisper about Mesopotamia. The land between the Tigris and Euphrates is soaking in oil. Millions of barrels just waiting to be drilled. The Baghdad Railway will run directly through it. The Germans secure the mineral rights. The contract gives them ownership of all resources within 20 kilometers of the railway line. This is not a trade route. It is a claim on the future. If the railway is finished, Germany will own the fuel that powers the 20th century. Britain cannot allow that, so they prepare for war. Not a war of soldiers, a war of finance and diplomacy and sabotage. The first weapon is the press. British newspapers began a campaign against the railway. They call it a tool of German imperialism. They accuse the Kaiser of trying to dominate the East. They publish cartoons showing German soldiers marching into India. The message is clear. The railway is not about trade. It is about conquest. The second weapon is diplomacy. In 1899, the British send a delegation to Kuwait. Kuwait is a small sheikdom at the tip of the Persian Gulf. It is technically part of the Ottoman Empire, but the Sultan's control is weak. The British offer the sheikh a deal. Sign an agreement pledging not to lease land to any foreign power without British approval. In exchange, Britain will protect Kuwait from Ottoman aggression. The sheikh agrees. It is a small agreement, a single piece of paper, but it is a strategic checkmate. The railway now has no terminal. It leads to nowhere. The Germans keep building anyway. The third weapon is finance. The City of London controls global capital. If you need a loan, you go to London. If you need to sell bonds, you go to London. The British government quietly tells every major bank in Europe to stay away from the Baghdad Railway. French banks, which usually compete with British banks, agree to the boycott. The railway is starved of cash. Construction slows. But Deutsche Bank keeps writing checks. The Kaiser is committed. By 1914, the railway has reached the Taurus Mountains in southern Turkey. There are still gaps in the line. The tunnels through the mountains are not finished, but the railway is 80% complete. The threat is real. Now we must talk about the economics of empire. Empires do not run on glory. They run on profit. The British Empire is not a charity. It is a business. Every colony must pay for itself. India is the crown jewel because it generates cash. British merchants buy Indian cotton and tea and sell it at a markup. British banks loan money to Indian princes at high interest rates. The whole system depends on keeping India economically dependent. If India could trade directly with Germany or Russia, it would not need Britain. The Suez Canal is the key to this system. It cuts the travel time from London to Bombay from months to weeks. As long as Britain controls Suez, they control the flow of goods to India. The Baghdad Railway threatens to make Suez irrelevant. A train from Berlin to Baghdad could carry goods faster and cheaper than a ship through the canal. This is not a military threat. It is an economic extinction event. Let us look at the numbers. In 1900, British trade with India is worth £150 million per year. The profits from this trade fund the British government. They pay for the Navy and the Army and the civil service. If Germany captures even 20% of this trade, Britain loses £30 million per year. Over a decade, that is £300 million. That is enough to build 30 battleships or fund a war. The British Treasury runs the calculations. They conclude that the railway must be stopped at any cost. The cost, it turns out, is World War I. We are told that World War I started because a Serbian nationalist shot an Austrian archduke in Sarajevo. That is true, but it is not the whole truth. The war started because Europe was a powder keg, and the powder keg was built by railway lines and oil fields and unpayable debts. The assassination was the spark, but the fuel was economic. The Triple Entente, the alliance between Britain, France, and Russia, was formed to encircle Germany. Russia joined because it wanted to destroy the Ottoman Empire and seize Constantinople. France joined because it owed billions to Russia and feared German industrial competition. Britain joined because of the railway. When the war began in August 1914, the Ottoman Empire tried to stay neutral. The Sultan knew that war would destroy his country, but Germany offered him a deal. If the Ottomans joined the war on the German side, Germany would cancel their debts. Germany would supply weapons and military advisors, and Germany would help the Ottomans retake Egypt and the Caucasus. The Sultan's advisors were divided, but the promise of freedom from debt was too tempting. In November 1914, the Ottoman Empire declared war on Britain and France. The British response was immediate. They sent an expeditionary force to Basra in southern Mesopotamia. The official reason was to protect the oil refinery at Abadan in Persia, but the real reason was to march north and seize the oil fields of Mosul and Kirkuk. The British were not fighting to defeat an army. They were fighting to seize an asset. The war in Mesopotamia was brutal. British and Indian soldiers died of heat stroke and disease. The Ottomans, under the command of German advisors, fought desperately. In 1916, the British suffered a humiliating defeat at the Siege of Kut. An entire British division was forced to surrender. It was one of the worst defeats in British military history. But the British had infinite resources. The Ottomans did not. The railway that was supposed to save them was still not finished. There were gaps in the line through the Taurus Mountains. Supplies had to be unloaded from trains, carried by truck over the mountains, and reloaded onto trains on the other side. This bottleneck strangled the Ottoman war effort. Troops could not be moved quickly. Ammunition ran out. Food ran out. If the railway had been finished 5 years earlier, the war might have ended differently. While the war raged, 2 diplomats sat in a room in London. Their names were Mark Sykes and Francois Georges Picot. Sykes was British. Picot was French. They had a map and a pencil. Their job was to divide the Ottoman Empire. The war was not over yet, but they were already planning the peace. The agreement they signed in 1916 is called the Sykes-Picot Agreement. It is one of the most infamous documents in history. It drew borders across the Middle East that ignored tribes and religions and geography. But if you look closely, you will see that the borders follow the railway. Britain took southern Mesopotamia, which contained the oil fields. France took Syria and Lebanon, which controlled the railway's northern route. The railway was cut into pieces. It would never function as a unified line. The dream of an iron road from Berlin to Baghdad was dead. The Ottoman Empire was dissolved in 1920. The Sultan was deposed. The Caliphate was abolished. The empire's debts were not forgiven. They were restructured. The new nations carved out of the empire, Turkey and Iraq and Syria, inherited the debt. They would spend the next 50 years paying off loans taken out by a government that no longer existed. This is the definition of generational theft. The British and French installed puppet governments in the new countries. They drew borders designed to create weak states that could never unify. Iraq was given access to the sea, but not enough coastline to build a navy. Syria was divided from Lebanon to separate the Muslims from the Christians. Palestine was promised to both the Arabs and the Jews. The contradictions were intentional. Weak states are easy to control. Let us talk about the oil. In 1920, British and French companies formed the Iraq Petroleum Company. It was a cartel. British Petroleum owned 23.75%. Royal Dutch Shell owned 23.75%. The French State Oil Company owned 23.75%. And American companies owned the rest. The IPC had exclusive rights to drill for oil in Iraq. The Iraqi government received a small royalty, but the profits flowed to London and Paris and New York. Between 1925 and 1950, the IPC extracted billions of barrels of oil from Iraq. The Iraqi people saw almost none of the money. This is what extraction looks like. The infrastructure is built to move resources out, not to develop the country. The railway that was supposed to modernize the Middle East became a tool of colonial plunder. Now let us fast forward. The ghost of the Baghdad Railway haunts the Middle East to this day. Every war in the region for the last 100 years has been fought along the same fault lines. The Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, the Gulf War in 1991, the invasion of Iraq in 2003, the Syrian Civil War. All of these conflicts are about the same thing. Who controls the corridor between Europe and Asia? Who controls the oil? Who controls the flow of goods and money? The borders drawn by Sykes and Picot have never been stable. They were designed to be unstable. A divided Middle East is a controllable Middle East. In the 21st century, the pattern is repeating. China is building the Belt and Road Initiative. It is a network of railways and highways and ports that will connect China to Europe. The route passes through Central Asia and the Middle East. It follows almost the exact same path as the Baghdad Railway. China is doing what Germany tried to do 100 years ago. It is building a land bridge that bypasses the naval choke points controlled by the United States. And just like the British in 1900, the Americans are panicking. They call the Belt and Road Initiative a debt trap. They accuse China of trying to dominate Eurasia. They use sanctions and trade wars to slow it down. The playbook has not changed. The only thing that has changed is the names. The lesson of the Baghdad Railway is simple. Infrastructure is never neutral. A railway is not just a way to move goods. It is a vector of power. It reshapes economies. It creates winners and losers. And the powers that control the old system will do anything to stop the new system from being built. The British destroyed the Ottoman Empire to stop a train. They redrew the map of the Middle East. They created borders that have caused a century of wars, all to protect their monopoly on trade. Think about the scale of that. Millions of people died. Entire nations were erased. And for what? To protect the profit margins of a few banks and trading companies. The Ottoman Empire believed borrowed money could buy independence. German funds promised freedom from Britain, but foreign-built infrastructure imported foreign enemies. The railway meant to save the empire became its battlefield. Debt turned modernization into chains. Sovereignty depends on solvency when you cannot pay. Creditors rule your country. The Baghdad Railway's tracks still exist active in Turkey, destroyed in Syria and Iraq. Tunnels lie abandoned, but geography endures. The shortest route from Europe to Asia still runs through this corridor. Oil flows, strategic value grows, and every Middle Eastern conflict echoes the century-old struggle over control, trade, and power. The Ottoman debt tells the deeper story. The Ottoman Public Debt Administration collected payments until 1954, 73 years after its creation. 3 generations of Turkish citizens paid European banks for loans taken by an empire that no longer existed. Empires fall, but debt survives. Even Britain, which helped dismantle the Ottomans, collapsed under its own debts after World War II and handed power to the United States. The Baghdad Railway is a warning. Wars are not driven by ideals, but by ledgers, supply chains, and control. The train meant to unite continents became the knife that split them apart. Geography is destiny, but the real question is who gets to draw the line and who pays the price.